Hey everyone, welcome to Yoga Detour. I'm Cecily, I'll be your instructor today, and I'm wondering if you have any back pain, because that's what our video today is going to be addressing. We seem to encounter a lot of students who are either injured or suffering from general aches and pains that are looking to our practice for some help. So that's what we're here for today. Roll out your mat and let's get started. So we're going to start on our backs, making sure you're comfortable. If you need something to support your head, please use a pillow or a small block. And we'll lie down, keeping the knees bent. Let's start with just taking a few breaths. Bring the breath a little bit more into the front and sides and back of your abdomen, rather than just keeping it up in the chest. And then drawing your awareness to your pelvis, we're just going to see if we can isolate the hips in a movement here that is mostly concentrated in this area of the body around the pelvis rather than your whole spine. So it's not so much a rib cage moving. I'm keeping the rib cage and the sternum nice and soft, and just looking for the tilting here of my sacrum, that broad bone at the back of the pelvis, the very base of the spine, to move forward and back. And I'm gradually going to start to let that movement shift as my pelvis tips back into more of a hip lift, where I'm looking to peel one little piece at a time off the floor. So each vertebra of the spine gets to have its moment of lifting up off the mat, until I arrive here, about on my shoulder blades, and then I'm going to come back down the same way. Lowering through the bottom ribs, seeing if I can notice where those sticky spots in my spine are, where things don't really want to articulate, and it kind of just comes down in one big chunk. Let's try that again, taking a breath. As we exhale, that's when the back starts to move into a little bit more flexion. I'm lifting the tailbone and pointing it up toward the ceiling. Smoothing out the creases in the front of the hips, lifting them up as I feel one vertebra at a time rolling off the floor. Getting up to the shoulder blades again, and coming down nice and slow. See if you can find a little bit more control on this one than you did the first time. Good. Last time, taking a breath. As we exhale, moving through the pelvis. Try to visualize the actual bowl of your pelvis tilting up. Moving the sacrum, moving through the low back, moving through the spine, and then finally into the ribs, up to the shoulder blades. And then coming back down, looking for that segmentation. Eventually, we start to feel, hopefully, there's a little bit of work controlling that action. Activation happening in the hamstrings, activation happening in the glutes, the bum. Those are going to be our supporting muscles that we really want to engage when it comes to controlling the movement in our spine. All right, so from here, we're going to shift up onto the hands and knees. And as you do that, if you feel like you need a little bit of padding for underneath your knees, like a blanket, or you want to roll your mat up a little bit, please do so you're comfortable there. All right, so now I'm going to look for that exact same type of articulation from my quadruped position. Without moving the head, I begin to draw the tailbone down. And then that movement travels through my spine like a wave, where sections begin to press up toward the ceiling, one at a time. You can see it moving through into my shoulders now. And I'll continue it through the neck until my chin falls in toward the chest. And I'm going to try and keep the chin in. Tailbone goes up. I take that extension through the lower back, the middle back, eventually into the upper, into the shoulders, and into the neck, head lifting. Let's go again, just follow your own pace here. See if you can find that differentiation between the different parts of your back. So we stop thinking of it as just one big piece, and instead recognize it for all the many pieces that it actually is. Nice, and as we get back to extension again with the head lifted, the tailbone lifted, give yourself a second to just relax, give it all a little shake. I'm going to take the hands now a little bit wider, and then moving the spine sort of like a jump rope in a full circle. So I'm going to lean over to my right arm, dip my chest in that direction, and then move across the mat over to the left, up now over the top, creating that rounded shape through my spine, and back down again, sweeping across the floor. Feel free to close your eyes, get into it, move around in a way that just feels good. And go the other direction. Maybe you want to incorporate a little bit of movement of the head and neck. One more time. Good. And then we're going to bring our hands back and find our way into a comfortable kneeling or seated position. I'm going to face you so you can see the rib cage here for what we're going to do next. The idea now is I want to be able to isolate more of the thoracic spine. The thoracic spine is what my ribs connect to. So I'm going to think about just moving that area as the arms come out wide. And I shift my ribs outside my hip bone and then bring them back to center. And then I'll do the same thing, reaching my ribs out to the left and back to center. If it feels like sitting down is making this feel a little bit awkward, try it in a tall kneel, where I then stabilize the pelvis, shift the rib cage. See how my shoulders are staying level? Shift the rib cage to the other side. And as I start to find more and more length, I feel this great combination of stretching with contraction through the sides of the body. And often that area can be super tight for a lot of us, and also needing a little bit more strength. Let's do one more, reaching out, and then pulling back to center. Okay, so that's mobilizing more through the thoracic cage. Now I'm going to stand up, and we're going to concentrate again on the pelvis, just like we started with. So without moving my rib cage this time, I'm going to feel my front hip bones here lift up. And you can see how as I do that, my tailbone drops, my lower back gets a little bit more flat. And then if I think of dropping my pubic bone down and lifting my sit bones, I create more of an arch in my spine and move a little bit more into the flexion, the creases here in the front of the hips. Can we move the pelvis like this in a way that doesn't feel like it's causing any compression here in the lower back? So if you feel most of the sensation through here, let's minimize the range a little bit more and make a little bit smaller movement. All right. Then I'm going to show you two different ways where you can make your way from standing down to the floor, because how often do we do that in yoga? All the forward bending. So one really looks at the flexion of the spine and the ability to articulate the vertebrae again like we've done before. So from here, I'm just going to drop the chin down, rolling forward, bending the knees, and moving slowly so that I'm again able to connect and feel what's happening in my spine. Bending the knees here as much as possible, or as much as you think feels good. Coming all the way down to the floor. I'm just letting my arms relax, my hands relaxed, head is heavy. And then I come up the same way. Rooting through the feet, keeping the knees soft. But feeling my legs here are engaging enough just to support the pelvis and support that slow lift of the spine. Head arriving last. That's one of my favorite things to do right away in the morning, just to wake things up. But if you have any kind of issue in your back where you've been told that that kind of forward bending, that kind of spinal flexion isn't a good idea, this is how you'll want to bend forward instead. I come back to that pelvic movement, and I'm going to think of tipping my front hip bones forward and allowing my spine to follow without bending my actual spine. So see here that this region especially of my low back is staying still, and it's just being carried by the pelvis. I have to bend my knees a little bit. I tip the pelvic bowl forward, and then that is what allows me to bend down, maybe to pick something up off the floor, or to make my way down onto the hands and knees. So using both of those types of lowering actions, either rolling through the spine or hinging through the hips, ideally both become accessible to us, and we start to use them in varying ways, just to keep everything moving the way it's designed to. I hope you enjoyed our practice today. Thanks for joining us as we follow the detour together.